I gave them a vacation to Miami, and they left me at home as if I were a burden. My heart still pounds when I remember that moment. When I understood that to my own children, I was nothing more than a means to an end. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd share. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening my soul. My name is Carol. I'm 64 years old, and I live in Chicago, in a house I bought brick by brick with the sweat of 30 years working at a diner downtown. My hands still hold the marks from hot coffee pots and sizzling grills, but also the invisible scars of raising my 3 children on my own, Mike, Chris, and Jason. It was a Tuesday morning when I decided to do something I thought would be beautiful. I got up at 5 a.m., as always, made coffee brewed strong with a hint of cinnamon, that aroma that always calms me, and sat in my favorite kitchen chair, the creaky wooden one that has become a part of my soul. The first light of dawn filtered through the floral curtains I sewed 15 years ago, back when I still believed my children would come to visit more often. I had been thinking all night. The last few months had been strange. Abrupt calls, canceled visits, broken promises. But I kept trying, like those mothers who don't know when to stop giving, because that's what they taught us, right? That a mother always gives, always forgives, always is. I picked up my phone, the device my kids forced me to upgrade 3 times because the old one is useless, Mom, and created a group chat. I named it The Miller Family, Miami 2024. I even chose a palm tree emoji. How naive I was. I wrote the most exciting message I had written in years. My sweethearts, I have a surprise. I've been saving up, and I want to give you all a family vacation in Miami. 5-star hotel, meals, activities, everything paid for. I want us to be together like we used to be. What do you say? My heart was beating so loud I could hear it. I imagined their happy faces, their grateful texts, their voices telling me, "Oh, Mom, you're the best." I held the phone to my chest and closed my eyes, feeling for a moment that I was the most important woman in their lives again. The silence lasted 4 hours. 4 hours in which I cleaned the entire house, watered the plants on the patio, my red geraniums that are the only thing that blooms without asking for anything in return, and prepared a pot roast, thinking maybe Mike would bring the grandkids over to celebrate the news. When the phone finally buzzed, the first message was from Chris. "Mom, that's amazing, but are you coming too?" My stomach twisted into a knot. "Are you coming too?" As if I were a guest for my own gift. I replied quickly, with that nervous haste that comes when I sense something bad is on its way. "Of course, honey. It's a family trip." What came next was worse than any nightmare. Mike wrote, "It's just, I don't know, Mom. Miami is kind of a young person's scene. You'd get tired out. Besides, the kids will want to do a lot of activities, and you're not really up for that anymore." Jason added, "Yeah, it's better if you stay here and watch the house. You know how the neighborhood gets when people are away." And Chris delivered the final blow. "Besides, Mom, we need some time to connect. As siblings. Without, well, you know, without me." That's what she didn't dare to say. Without the mom who raised them. Without the woman who sold her sewing machine to pay for Mike's college tuition. Without the one who stayed up for 3 straight months when Chris had postpartum depression. Without the one who took out a second mortgage on this very house to get Jason out of jail when he got into trouble with the wrong crowd. I stared at the phone screen until the letters blurred. It wasn't because of my glasses, which are always slipping down my nose. It was because of the tears that refused to fall, as if my body already knew that crying wouldn't change a thing. I walked to my bedroom and sat in front of the vanity that belonged to my mother. My reflection showed a woman with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun, wrinkles that told stories of worry, and tired eyes that had seen too much lovelessness disguised as practicality. When did I become the burden? When did I stop being Carol, the woman who could sling hash and dance until dawn at neighborhood block parties, and become Mom the ATM, Mom the problem, Mom who's better off at home? That night, we had dinner together over a video call. They were excited, making plans, laughing. I was quiet, nodding, pretending I thought it was a perfect idea for me to stay home alone. We'll bring you back lots of souvenirs, Mom, Chris said with that sweet voice she used when she needed something. Yeah, Mom, and we'll send you tons of pictures, Mike added while showing me hotels online. Jason just said, Thanks, Mom. You're the best. When I hung up, the house was filled with a different kind of silence. It wasn't the silence of peace, but the silence of an aching loneliness. The silence of someone who has just discovered they've been buying love that was never real. I poured myself a tall glass of sweet iced tea and sat down again in my kitchen chair. Outside, the neighbors were closing their shops. Mrs. Gable from the corner swept her front stoop. Just like every night. Life went on as normal for everyone, except for me. Because that night, while my children dreamed of beaches I would never see, I stayed awake wondering if I had ever been truly important to them, or if I had always been just the woman who paid the bills. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed in the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a cold coffee mug, remembering everything I had done for them, every sacrifice, every tear, every dollar I had stopped spending on myself to give to them. Remember when Mike was 8 and broke his arm playing soccer at school? I was working double shifts at the diner, from 4 in the morning until 8 at night. My hands were so swollen from the steam and heat that I couldn't fully close my fists. But when the doctor told me Mike needed a surgery that would cost $5,000, I didn't think twice. I pawned the gold earrings my mother had given me for my 16th birthday, the only nice earrings I had ever owned. They were worth exactly $4,800. I was short $200. Do you know what I did? I sold my Singer sewing machine, the one I used to make dresses for the neighborhood girls' Sweet 16s to earn a little extra cash on weekends. Mike's arm healed perfectly. He still plays soccer with his own kids to this day, but never, not once, did he ask me what I had to sell to save him. He never asked why I stopped sewing dresses. He never noticed my gold earrings were gone, and when he turned 15, do you know what he asked for? A PlayStation that cost $500. All my friends have one, Mom. I don't want to be the poor kid in class. He said it just like that, without looking at me, while I peeled potatoes for dinner in the same plastic chair I sat in every day because I'd given my dining set to Chris when she got married. I cleaned houses on weekends for 6 months. I'd come home on Saturday evenings with purple knees from scrubbing floors, my nails broken from cleaning other people's bathrooms, and he wouldn't even look up from the TV to say thank you. With Chris, it was worse. Much worse. When she got pregnant at 18, her boyfriend left her. She came to my house crying, with a barely noticeable belly, and eyes swollen from tears. I have nowhere to go, Mom. I don't have a job. I have nothing. I held her like I did when she was a little girl crying from nightmares. I set up her old room for her again, the same one I had turned into my sewing room. I packed away all my fabrics, my patterns, my projects. My space became hers again. For 9 months, I worked for 2 people. I bought the most expensive prenatal vitamins, the special organic milk, the cute maternity clothes so she wouldn't feel frumpy. I sold my big refrigerator and bought a small one so the crib would fit in the kitchen. I slept on the living room sofa so she could have the comfortable bed. When my granddaughter Sophie was born, it was the happiest day of my life. That little girl came into the world in my arms. In the same hospital where I now work as a cleaner on weekends to pay my bills. Chris had complications and was unconscious for 3 days. I never left the room. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just watched over my daughter and cared for my granddaughter. When Chris woke up, the first thing she did was cry. Not from happiness. From fear. I don't know how I'm going to support her, Mom. I don't know how to be a mother. I'm scared. I took her hand, the same hand I had kissed when she hurt herself as a child, and told her, I'll help you. I'll always be here. And I kept my word. For 3 years, Chris and Sophie lived with me. I would work, then rush home to take care of the baby so Chris could study for an associate's degree in computer science. I gave her bottles, changed her diapers, stayed up with her when she had a fever. Chris would go out with her friends on weekends, and I would stay with the baby. One day, Chris met Robert, an engineer with a good job. She fell head over heels. And when he proposed, she came to talk to me. Mom, Robert and I are moving in together. He wants us to start our family, just the 3 of us. The 3 of us? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Robert, Sophie, and me. He says it's important for us to form our own family unit, without interference. Interference? That was me, the grandmother who had raised Sophie for the first 3 years of her life. The woman who knew exactly how she liked her cereal, which songs calmed her down, how to brush her curly hair so it wouldn't tangle. When they left, the house felt like a graveyard. Sophie's room was empty, the walls still covered in princess decals we had put up together. Her high chair stayed in the kitchen for months because I didn't have the heart to put it away. And Jason, oh my Jason, my baby, my youngest. Jason was always rebellious, but I thought it was just a phase. In his 20s, he started hanging out with a crowd I didn't like at all. He'd come home smelling strange, with bloodshot eyes, talking nonsense. When I asked him what was wrong, he'd yell, "Stop trying to control me, Mom. I'm a grown man." One morning, there was a knock on the door. It was the police. My son had been arrested for selling drugs near a middle school. The cheapest lawyer I could find quoted me $10,000. I didn't have it. Do you know what I did? I took out a second mortgage on this house. The house I had bought working day and night for 15 years. The house where I raised my 3 children. The house that holds my happiest and saddest memories. I signed papers I didn't fully understand, my hand trembling, while the man from the bank explained that if I didn't make every single payment on time for 5 years, I would lose everything. Jason was released, and when he got home, he didn't say thank you. He said, "It was your obligation. I'm your son." His obligation. Now, as the coffee grew cold in my hands and the clock struck 3 in the morning, I wondered when I had stopped being a person and become an obligation. When my children had started seeing me as a bank that always had funds available, as an employee who was always willing to work for free. I went to the room where I keep my important papers and pulled out an old shoebox. Inside were all the things they had never valued. The hospital receipts I paid, the birthday photos where I'm always serving the cake while they blow out the candles, the letters they wrote me when they were little, telling me I was the best mom in the world. There was one in particular, from Mike when he was 10, written in his childish scrawl, "Mom, thank you for taking care of me when I was sick. When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a bigger house and I'll never leave you alone. I love you." That letter made me cry like I hadn't cried in years. Not from nostalgia, from pain, from the betrayal of seeing how a child's promises curdle into an adult's neglect. That same day, while I was making the breakfast only I would eat, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mike in the group chat where they had been planning the Miami trip all week. "Mom, we bought the tickets. We leave on Friday. Is the money ready to transfer to the hotel?" Not, "Good morning." Not, "How did you sleep?" Just, "Is the money ready?" For the first time in 64 years, I stared at that message and had a thought I'd never had before. What if I said no? That question haunted me for days. What if I said no? It echoed in my head as I swept the patio, as I prepared my solitary meals, as I watched soap operas that no longer moved me because real life hurt more than any fictional drama. On Thursday afternoon, 2 days before their trip, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I visited my sister, Hope. She lives 6 blocks away, but our lives had grown so far apart that we only spoke at funerals and on Christmas. Hope is my age, but she looks 10 years younger. Her hair is perfectly dyed chestnut brown, she wears new clothes, and her house always smells of scented candles instead of the lingering scent of pot roast in mine. "Carol, what are you doing here?" she asked when she opened the door, with the genuine surprise of someone not expecting company. "I need to talk to someone, Hope. I feel lost." She led me into her living room, the one that's always spotless because her kids no longer live with her and no one messes things up. She offered me coffee and store-bought cookies, not homemade like mine that no one appreciated. I told her everything. The Miami trip, the exclusion, the years of sacrifice, the feeling of having lost my identity somewhere between paying medical bills and babysitting grandchildren who now barely speak to me. Hope listened in silence, nodding occasionally, with that expression I knew from childhood, the face she made when she knew I was wrong but didn't know how to tell me without hurting me. "Carol," she finally said, "do you know why my kids and I have such a good relationship?" I didn't know what to say. Her children visited her every Sunday, took her out to dinner, bought her gifts for no reason, because from the time they were little, I taught them that mom is not an employee. I taught them that mom is a person with needs, with dreams, with limits. When they asked for something, I evaluated whether I could give it without hurting myself, and when I couldn't, I said no. Her words hit me like buckets of ice water. But you, Carol, you taught them that mom is an inexhaustible bank, that mom always says yes, that mom has no right to be tired, to say no, to exist for herself. And now, when you want to change the rules of the game, they feel betrayed. I sat in silence, feeling each of my sister's words pierce my chest like pins. When was the last time you did something just for you? When was the last time you spent money on yourself without feeling guilty? I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. I literally could not remember. When was the last time you said, I can't today, or that doesn't seem fair to me? I had no answer for that either. I went home that night with a strange weight in my stomach. It wasn't hunger. It was the weight of a truth I didn't want to accept. I had raised 3 children who saw me as a resource, not a mother. As an obligation, not a choice of love. Friday arrived faster than I expected. At 6 in the morning, I received a text from Chris. Mom, the Uber is on its way. Did you transfer the hotel money? I need confirmation before we take off. I stared at that message for 20 minutes. 20 minutes in which I relived 30 years of motherhood. 20 minutes in which I understood that this was the moment. The moment I could continue being Mom the Bank, or I could try to be Carol again. I typed and deleted my response 10 times. My fingers trembled on the screen. Finally, I wrote, Kids, we need to talk. I'm not paying for the hotel. The response was immediate. My phone went crazy with messages. Mike, what? Mom, we're already on our way to the airport. Chris, this can't be happening, Mom. Everything is planned. Are you feeling okay? What's wrong with you? Jason, Mom, you can't do this to us. We have everything ready. And then the calls started, one after another. But I didn't answer. I sat in my kitchen chair, the phone on silent on the table, and for the first time in decades, I sat perfectly still while my children screamed my name through the speaker. At 10 in the morning, Mike arrived at my house. He was furious, his face red, throwing the door open like he did as a teenager when he was angry I wouldn't give him money to go out. Can you please tell me what's wrong with you, Mom? Have you lost your mind? Chris is crying at the airport. Jason had to borrow money for the hotel. What kind of mother does this? There was the question. What kind of mother does this? A tired one, Mike, I answered, surprising myself with how calm my voice sounded. A mother who just realized her children see her as a burden when she wants to join them, but as a bank when they need money. That's not true, isn't it? Then tell me, son, when was the last time you visited me just to visit? When was the last time you asked me how I am, what I need, how I feel? Mike fell silent. He paced my living room like a caged animal. That's different, Mom. We have our lives, our families, our jobs. And I have mine too, Mike. Or at least I did, before I became the woman who only exists to solve problems and pay bills. He sat on the sofa, the same sofa I had slept on for months while Chris and Sophie lived with me. He looked confused, as if for the first time he was seeing a different person instead of just Mom. I don't understand what you want us to do, he mumbled. I want you to see me, to value me, to include me not because I pay for things, but because I'm your mother, and you love me. Of course we love you, really, because love isn't just saying I love you when you need something. Love is asking how I am. It's inviting me to dinner when it's not Mother's Day. It's proudly introducing me to your friends instead of hiding me because I don't fit into your fancy life. Mike didn't know what to say. He just sat there, staring at the floor, like when he was a boy and knew he'd done something wrong but didn't know how to fix it. The hotel is paid for 3 nights, I finally told him. That's my gift to you. But I'm not going to continue being the mom who gives everything and gets nothing but crumbs of affection in return. He left without saying goodbye. He just took his bags and left. That night, alone in my house, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat on my back patio. The stars seemed brighter than usual, or maybe it was just that I hadn't had time to look at them in years. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel guilty for saying no. I felt strange. Like when you take off shoes that have been pinching you all day, and you can finally breathe. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my children would understand or if they would hate me forever. But that night, lulled by the sound of crickets and the scent of the flowers in my small garden, I slept more peacefully than I had in years, because for the first time in a long time, I had chosen to be Carol instead of just Mom. The next 3 days were a hell I wouldn't wish on any mother. It all started on Saturday morning, when my phone began ringing off the hook. It was Chris, calling from Miami, and her voice sounded different. It wasn't my little girl's voice asking for help. It was the voice of a furious, calculating woman who had decided to hurt me where it would hurt the most. "Mom, I hope you're happy," she said without even a hello. "Because of you, Robert thinks we're a family of lunatics. We had to borrow money for the hotel, and now everyone knows my mother left us high and dry. Chris, No, Mom. I don't want to hear your excuses. You know what? Sophie asked about you yesterday. I told her Grandma was sick and that's why she couldn't travel. Because it's easier to explain that than to tell her that her grandmother has become selfish." My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. My granddaughter. My little Sophie asking for me and her mother lying to make me look like the villain. Selfish? I'm selfish? Yes, Mom. Selfish. All our lives we've depended on you because you taught us to. And now, when we need you most, you abandon us. That's selfish. She hung up before I could reply. An hour later, Jason showed up at my house. But he wasn't alone. He had Sophie with him, my 8-year-old granddaughter, dressed for a special occasion in her little pink dress and shiny shoes. "Hi, Grandma," Sophie said, running to me with that smile that always melted my heart. "Uncle Jason told me you're sad because you couldn't go to Miami with them. Is that true?" I looked at Jason over my granddaughter's head. He had that fake smile I knew from his childhood, the one he used when he wanted to manipulate me. "Sophie, my love, why don't you go look at the flowers in the garden while I talk to your uncle?" I said, kissing her forehead. When the little girl was out of earshot, Jason dropped the act. "Well played, Mom," he said sarcastically, "using money as a weapon to control us. I never thought you were so manipulative." "Me? Manipulative? Jason, I was only what? Only decided to ruin our vacation because we didn't invite you? Only decided to humiliate us in front of Robert's entire family? Because they all know now, you know. Everyone knows that Carol Miller abandoned her kids at the airport. I didn't abandon you. I paid for 3 nights at the hotel. 3 nights! We were supposed to stay for a week. We had to come back early because we didn't have the money. Mike had to pawn his watch. Chris cried all night. He stepped closer, and for the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own son. His face was red with rage, his fists clenched, and he spoke with a cruelty I had never seen. "You know what makes me angriest, Mom? That you brought Sophie here to emotionally blackmail me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I didn't bring Sophie for anything. Sophie wanted to see you because she misses you. Because even though her grandmother is selfish, she still loves you. But you know what I'm going to teach her? I'm going to teach her she can't trust you. That the people who say they love you will betray you in the end." "Jason!" "What, Mom? Does it hurt?" "Well, imagine how we feel. Imagine how Mike felt when he had to call his in-laws to borrow money. Do you know how humiliating that was?" That comment about Mike's in-laws hit me like a ton of bricks. Mike had to ask his wife's parents for money? Because of me? Guilt began to eat at me from the inside. Maybe Jason was right. Maybe I had been selfish. Maybe I should have just kept paying for everything and kept my mouth shut, like always. "You know what we're going to do?" Jason continued, seeing that I was starting to waver. "We're going to give you time to reflect, time for you to realize the damage you've done. Sophie is not going to see you until you offer a full apology to the entire family." "An apology? For what?" "For ruining our vacation, for humiliating us, for being selfish after all the years we've been good children to you." Good children? When had they been good children to me? When Mike yelled at me because his wife didn't like the food I cooked for family dinners? When Chris forbade me from having an opinion on raising Sophie because times have changed? When Jason borrowed money for his business and never paid me back? But Sophie's presence confused me. Seeing my granddaughter there, innocent, oblivious to the adult manipulations, made me doubt everything. "Grandma," Sophie said, returning from the garden with flowers in her hand. Why is everyone sad? Did I do something wrong? No, my love. You did nothing wrong, I said, crouching down to her level. Then why does Mommy say I can't come see you until you're good again? There it was. Chris had used my granddaughter, the person I loved most in the world, as a weapon against me. Sophie? Jason said in a syrupy voice. Tell your grandma you love her very much, but you're sad she didn't go on the trip with us. My granddaughter looked at me with her big, trusting eyes and repeated the words she had obviously been coached to say. Grandma, I love you very much, but I'm sad you didn't go on the trip with us. Mommy says you could have gone, but you didn't want to. I felt like I had been stabbed. They were using an 8-year-old child to manipulate me. They had lied to her, making her believe I had chosen not to go, when the reality was that they had excluded me. Jason, take Sophie home, I said, getting to my feet on trembling legs. Now, aren't you going to answer your granddaughter? I'll answer her when she's not being used as an instrument of blackmail. Jason took Sophie's hand, but before leaving, he turned to me with a cruel smile. Oh, and Mom, just so you know, we've already talked to the family. Our aunts, our uncles, our cousins, the neighbors. Everyone knows what you're really like now. No one sees you as the sainted, selfless mother anymore. Now they all know you're a selfish, manipulative old woman. When they left, I collapsed into my kitchen chair. The flowers Sophie had left on the table looked wilted, just like everything in my life. I couldn't eat dinner that night. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't do anything but wonder if I really was the villain in this story. If I had truly been selfish for wanting to be included instead of just being useful. Sunday was worse. Mrs. Gable, my lifelong neighbor, came over, the one who always greeted me with a warm smile. Oh, Carol, she said with that pitying look I hate. Chris told me what happened. Your poor children. What a terrible thing to do to them after they've always been so good to you. Even my own neighbor was against me. Mrs. Gable, things aren't how they told you. Oh, Carol, don't make excuses. Look, I understand that sometimes we get lonely, but using money to punish your children, that's just not right. That night, alone in my house, with the entire neighborhood against me and my own children treating me like a monster, I wondered if it would have been better to just remain Mom the Bank for my whole life. At least then, everyone loved me. Or so I thought. I spent the whole week shut in my house, curtains drawn, staring at the same 4 walls and wondering if I had lost my mind. Every time the phone rang, my heart leaped, thinking it might be one of my kids calling to apologize, to say they understood, that they missed me. But no, it was calls from unknown numbers that hung up when I answered, or texts from distant cousins asking if what they were saying was true. The story had spread through the whole city like wildfire. Carol Miller, the mother who abandoned her children at the airport. On Thursday morning, as I sipped my morning coffee and tried to find the strength to get up from the table, there was a knock at my door. I thought it was another relative coming to judge me. But when I opened it, it was my granddaughter Sophie, alone. Grandma, she said with teary eyes, I ran away from home. I wanted to see you. My heart did a somersault. My 8-year-old granddaughter had run away to come see me. What on earth had they been telling her at home? How did you get here, sweetheart? I walked. Mommy was on the phone with some aunt, saying mean things about you. That you were bad, that you were selfish. But I know you're not bad, Grandma. You take care of me when I'm sick. You make my grilled cheese just the way I like it. You let me help you in the garden. I knelt in front of her and hugged her with all my might. For the first time in days, someone was defending me. And it was an 8-year-old girl. Why is everyone mad at you, Grandma? How do you explain to a child that her family is using emotional manipulation tactics? How do you tell her that adults are sometimes crueler than children? Because sometimes grown-ups get confused, sweetheart. Sometimes they think a person is bad when really they're just tired. Are you tired? Yes, Sophie. I'm very tired. Of what? Of giving lots of love and getting very little back. Sophie stood there thinking, with the seriousness children have when they're processing important information. You know what my teacher told me yesterday? She asked suddenly. What did she tell you? She said that when someone treats you badly, it's okay to walk away. That you don't have to stay with people who hurt you, even if they're your family, out of the mouths of babes. My 8-year-old granddaughter had just given me the clearest lesson I'd received in weeks. When Chris arrived 20 minutes later, running, yelling, and scolding Sophie for running away, I had already made a decision. "Chris, we need to talk," I said with a calm that surprised me. "I have nothing to talk about with you. Sophie, get in the car. Now." "Chris," I repeated, more firmly this time. "We need to talk. Either we talk like adults, or I'm going to have to make some decisions you're not going to like." Something in my tone made her stop. She looked at me with an expression I'd seen 1,000 times when she was a child, and knew she had crossed a line. "Sophie, go play in the garden for 5 minutes," I told my granddaughter. When the girl was gone, I looked my daughter in the eyes for the first time in days. "What decisions?" Chris asked, but her voice didn't sound so confident anymore. "For 30 years, I have paid for everything. Everything, Chris. Your college, your wedding, your house, Mike's car, Jason's lawyers, medical emergencies, vacations, birthday presents, Christmases. For 30 years, I have been your personal bank." "Mom, I'm not finished. For 30 years, I have babysat your children, cooked for your families, canceled my plans to be available whenever you needed me. For 30 years, I have put your needs before my own." Chris wasn't interrupting me anymore. She had sat on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, like when she was a little girl and knew she'd done something very wrong. "And for 30 years, you have all taken that for granted. Not as gifts of love, but as my obligations. And when, for the first time in my life, I said I want to be included, you told me I didn't fit, that I was a burden, that it was better if I stayed home. We didn't say you were a burden." "Really? Miami is for young people? You're not up for that anymore? We need time for ourselves without, you know?" "What was that, Chris?" My daughter fell silent, staring at the floor. "But what hurts the most," I continued, "is that when I decided to set a boundary, when I decided to say, I'm not going to stay here like the hired help who watches the house, you decided to punish me. You decided to make me the villain. You decided to use my granddaughter to emotionally blackmail me. Sophie asked about you, and you told her I was sick. You lied so you wouldn't have to admit you excluded me. And then you sent Jason over with her to make me feel guilty." Chris started to cry, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration from someone who realizes their strategy has failed. "What do you want us to do, Mom? What do you want?" "I want respect. I want you to see me as a person, not a resource. I want you to include me in your lives not because I pay the bills, but because I'm your mother and you claim to love me. We do love you. Do you? Because love isn't just about taking, Chris. Love is about giving, too. It's about caring. It's about including. It's about valuing." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my garden where Sophie was playing with the flowers. "I've made a decision," I said without looking at her. "I'm not paying for anything anymore. The Bank of Carroll is closed." "What?" "No more tuition for the kids. No more medical emergencies. No more broken-down cars. No more family vacations. No more loans that are never repaid." "Mom, you can't do that. We depend on you." "Exactly. You depend on me. But I don't depend on you for anything. Not for love, not for company, not for respect. Do you see how unbalanced this relationship is?" Chris shot up from the sofa, her face red with rage. "So what? You're just going to punish us forever?" "I'm not punishing you. I'm simply going to live my life. I'm going to spend my money on myself. I'm going to use my time for my own things. I'm going to take care of myself the way I've taken care of you for 30 years. But we're your family, and you will always be my family. But you're going to have to prove you love me for who I am, not for what I can give you. You're going to have to earn my forgiveness, my trust, my time." Chris walked toward the door, but before she left, she turned back to me. "And what if we don't want to do that? What if we decide it's too complicated to have a relationship with you like this?" The question my daughter asked hurt me more than any physical blow, but it also gave me the clearest answer I'd had in weeks. "Then I'll know you never really loved me, and I'll be able to live my life without the burden of people who only wanted me for my money." Chris left, taking Sophie with her, But before getting in the car, my granddaughter ran back and hugged me. "I love you, Grandma, no matter what anyone else says." That night, for the first time in 30 years, I didn't worry if there was enough food for unexpected visitors. I didn't worry if I had money saved for my children's emergencies. I didn't worry about anything but myself. I made a delicious dinner just for me. I poured myself a glass of wine I had been saving for a special occasion. I put on my most comfortable robe and sat in my garden to watch the stars. And for the first time in decades, the silence in my house didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. 3 weeks after my conversation with Chris, when I had started to get used to the idea that my children might never speak to me again, I received a message in the family group chat they had recreated without me. This time, they added me for a specific purpose. Mike wrote, "Family, we all need to meet this Sunday at 2 p.m. at Mom's house. It's urgent. It's about the future of our family." The tone was solemn, official, like when they organized important things. Like when they all decided what my mother's funeral would be like without asking me what I wanted. Like when they planned Chris's wedding and told me how much I had to contribute. For 3 days, that meeting had my stomach in knots. What were they going to tell me? Were they coming to apologize? Or were they coming to give me a final ultimatum? Sunday arrived gray and overcast, as if the sky itself knew something important was about to happen. I got up early, cleaned the whole house, made a pitcher of sweet iced tea, and bought cookies from the corner bakery. The same rituals as always when my children were coming over. The same rituals I'd performed for 30 years. But this time was different. This time I wasn't nervous about pleasing them. This time I was nervous because I knew I would have to stand firm in my decision, no matter the cost. They arrived together, all 3 of them, in Mike's car. Their spouses came too: Laura, Mike's wife, and Robert, Chris's husband. Even Jason brought his new girlfriend, a young woman I barely knew because he'd never formally introduced me. They sat in my living room as if it were a boardroom meeting. Mike on the main sofa, Chris and Robert in dining chairs they'd brought in, Jason and his girlfriend on the love seat. All very serious, very organized. I remained standing because something told me I'd be better off having this conversation from above, not below. "Mom," Mike began in that voice he used when he wanted to sound important, "we've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks. We've talked among ourselves, with our partners, and even with a family therapist Laura knows. A therapist. They had gone to a therapist to talk about me. And we've come to the conclusion that what's happening here is a very serious communication crisis," Chris continued, reading from a paper she held in her hands. The therapist explained that sometimes older people go through processes of adjustment when they feel less relevant in the family. Older people? Processes of adjustment? They were talking to me as if I were an old woman with dementia. "We know you feel lonely," Jason added with that condescending voice I hate. "And we understand that you want more attention. But the way you're handling it isn't healthy, Mom. It's not healthy for you or for us." Robert, who rarely spoke at family gatherings, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Miller, with all due respect, Chris and I have been seeing how this situation is affecting Sophie. The child is confused. She's constantly asking about you, and we don't know what to tell her." There it was again, using my granddaughter as a weapon. "For that reason," Mike continued, "we've decided to propose a plan that works for everyone." He pulled a folder from his briefcase. A folder. They had prepared documents for this conversation. "First, we acknowledge that perhaps we haven't been expressive enough with our affection for you. We are going to make an effort to visit you more often, to include you more in our activities. Second," Chris went on, reading from her paper, "we will organize a monthly family dinner where we can all be together and you can spend time with the grandkids. Third," said Jason, "we're going to be more conscious of asking how you are, of being attentive to your emotional needs." It all sounded very nice, very organized, very planned. "But," Mike added, and here came the but I knew was coming, "we need you to do your part too." "What part?" I asked, though I could already guess the answer. "We need you to understand that we are independent adults, with our own families, our own expenses, our own responsibilities," Chris explained. We can't rely solely on our own incomes to maintain the lifestyle we've built together as a family. There it was, the real reason for the meeting. In other words, I said, you want me to go back to paying for everything, and in return, you'll give me scheduled crumbs of attention. It's not crumbs, Mom, Mike protested. It's a structured plan to improve our family relationship. A structured plan? I repeated, feeling as if I were in a surreal movie. You're offering me a visitation schedule in exchange for me continuing to finance your lives? Laura, Mike's wife, spoke for the first time. Mrs. Miller, I think you're misinterpreting our intentions. We just want the family to function well. Function well for whom, Laura? I asked her directly. For you, who will continue to receive money without working for it. Or for me, who will continue to pay for love that's doled out with an eyedropper. The silence became tense. Very tense. Mom, Jason said, changing tactics, do you know how much it's cost Mike to support his family without your help? Do you know that Chris has had to take out loans for Sophie's school? Do you know I haven't been able to pay my apartment rent? And do you know, I replied, how much it has cost me to support you for 30 years? Do you know that I've never had a vacation because all my money went to you? Do you know that I have no savings for my old age because I gave it all to you? But you're our mother, Chris yelled, finally losing her composure. It's your responsibility to take care of us. You are 35, 38, and 42 years old, I yelled back, surprising myself with the volume of my own voice. You are not children. You are adults who never learned to stand on your own 2 feet because I never let you. I walked to my bedroom and returned with the shoebox I'd been keeping for weeks. I placed it on the coffee table, in front of all of them. Do you know what's in here? I asked, opening the box. It's all the receipts, all the statements, all the invoices for everything I've paid for you over the last 10 years. I started pulling out papers and laying them on the table. Hospital bill when Mike's second child was born, $7,000. Chris's first car when she got married, $15,000. Jason's lawyers, $20,000. Tuitions, emergencies, vacations, gifts, loans you never paid back. The papers piled up on the table like evidence of a life spent in service to others. Do you know what all this adds up to? Have you ever once wondered how much money I've spent on you? Mike picked up a few receipts and looked at them. His face began to pale. Almost $200,000, I told them. $200,000 that I spent on you instead of saving for my own future. Mom, Chris whispered. No, Chris. Now it's my turn to talk. For 30 years, you have lived like rich people on your poor mother's money. For 30 years, you have taken my sacrifices as your due. And when I asked for the first time for a little respect, a little inclusion, a little genuine love, you told me I was a burden. I stood before them, feeling something I had never felt before, power. So here is my answer to your structured plan. No, I will not be your bank again. I will not buy your love with money. I will not accept scheduled crumbs of affection. Then what do you want? Mike asked, his voice desperate. I want you to love me unconditionally. I want you to seek me out because you miss me, not because you need money. I want you to include me because I am your mother, not because I am useful. And what if we can't give you that? Chris asked, her voice trembling. Then I will live happily, knowing that I have freed myself from people who never truly loved me. They all fell silent. Robert was the first to stand. I think we need time to process this, he said, taking Chris's hand. One by one, they got up and left, without saying goodbye, without a hug, without looking me in the eye. Mike was the last one to leave. At the door, he turned back to me. This isn't going to end well, Mom, he said. You're going to end up alone. I was already alone, Mike, I replied. The only difference is now it's by choice, not by neglect. When the door closed, I stood in my living room, surrounded by receipts and invoices, surrounded by the evidence of a lifetime of giving without receiving. But for the first time in decades, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. The first few days after the confrontation were strange, like when you step out of a dark room and your eyes need time to adjust to the light. For 30 years, my routine had revolved around the needs of others. What does Mike need? How is Chris doing? What trouble did Jason get into now? Suddenly, for the first time in decades, the only question that mattered was, What does Carol need? And the answer scared me because I didn't know it. I spent the first week like a zombie, wandering through my house, not knowing what to do with my hands, my time, my mind. How do you live when you don't have to look after anyone but yourself? But on Tuesday of the second week, as I was drinking coffee in my kitchen and looking out the window at the garden I had neglected for months, I noticed something. The plants were growing on their own. The geraniums I had planted years ago had bloomed without my help, more beautiful than ever. Maybe I could bloom on my own too. That same day, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I went to the mall alone, not to buy something my children needed, but to see what I liked. I walked leisurely through the stores, looking at clothes, shoes, perfumes, things I had for years considered unnecessary luxuries, because there were always more important expenses. In a clothing store, I found a turquoise dress, the kind I would have previously seen and thought, that's pretty, but what do I need it for? I don't go anywhere. This time, I tried it on. It fit perfectly. It made my eyes look brighter, my skin look younger. It looks beautiful on you, the young saleswoman told me. You look very elegant. Elegant? Me? It had been so long since anyone had said something like that to me that I almost started crying right there in the dressing room. I bought the dress, and a pair of shoes to match, and a necklace I liked. I spent more on myself in one afternoon than I had in the last 5 years combined. When I got home with my bags, I sat in my kitchen chair and, for the first time in weeks, I laughed. I laughed out loud, by myself, out of pure happiness, from the strange and wonderful sensation of having treated myself. That night, I put on my new dress, even though I wasn't going anywhere. I put on a little makeup, did my hair nicely, and poured myself a glass of the wine I had been saving. I sat on my back patio, watching the stars, feeling like a new woman. The next day, I called Hope, my sister. Carol, how are you? I heard what happened with the kids. I'm good, Hope. Better than good. I'm free. Free? Free from being the woman who only exists to solve other people's problems. Free from being Mom the bank. Free from begging for love that should be given freely. There was a silence on the other end of the line. You know what? I continued. I'm going on a trip, by myself, to some place beautiful where nobody knows me and I can just be Carol, not somebody's mom. Really? Really. In fact, do you remember our cousin Rose, the one who lives in Santa Barbara? She's always invited me to visit. I think it's time I took her up on it. That same afternoon, I called Rose. We hadn't spoken in about 10 years, but when she heard my voice on the phone, she screamed with excitement. Carol, what a miracle! How are you? I'm being reborn, cousin. Is that invitation to Santa Barbara still open? Of course. When do you want to come? Is next week okay? Perfect. I'll show you the Santa Barbara the tourists don't see. I'm going to spoil you rotten, just like you deserve. Oi. When I hung up, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt since I was young. The thrill of adventure, of the unknown, of doing something just for the pleasure of it. I bought my bus ticket that very night, the most spontaneous trip of my life. As I was packing, I realized I didn't know what to bring, because I didn't know what kind of woman I was going to be in Santa Barbara. The shy Carol they knew in Chicago? Or a new Carol, one who was just starting to discover herself? I decided to pack my turquoise dress. I decided to pack the new shoes. I decided to pack the Carol who was being reborn. The bus ride was an experience in itself. It had been years since I'd traveled alone, and at first, I felt strange, as if everyone could tell I was a 64-year-old woman who didn't know how to travel without children to look after. But as the hours passed, that feeling turned into freedom. I could read my book without being interrupted. I could watch the scenery go by without anyone asking how much longer. I could use the restroom whenever I pleased without anyone telling me we were going to be late. When I arrived in Santa Barbara, Rose was waiting for me at the station. The years had passed for both of us, but when we hugged, it was as if we were young cousins again, playing together at our grandmother's house. Just look at you, she said, taking my hands. You look different. You look radiant. I feel different, I confessed. I feel like I'm waking up from a very long dream. Rose lives in a small but beautiful house, 5 blocks from the beach. She has a patio full of tropical plants that smell like paradise, and from her deck, You can see the ocean. This will be your home for as long as you want to stay, she said, showing me the room she had prepared for me. And we are going to do everything you haven't done in years. That first night, we ate seafood at a restaurant on the waterfront. Me in my turquoise dress, Rose in a white one that made her look like a goddess, both of us laughing like crazy while the waiter flirted and brought us cocktails on the house. When was the last time a man flirted with you? Rose asked between laughs. I can't remember, I answered. And it was the truth. I think I stopped existing as a woman the day I became Mom the Fixer. Well, you listen to me, cousin. For the next few days, you are going to remember that you are a beautiful, smart, fun woman who deserves to be spoiled. And so began the most wonderful week I'd had in decades. Rose took me for walks along the waterfront at dawn, when the ocean is like a mirror and the world is painted in pink and gold. She took me to farmers markets where we bought exotic fruits I had never tasted. She taught me how to haggle with the vendors. She took me salsa dancing in the public square. She taught me how to be spontaneous again. One day we went to a spa where I had my first professional massage ever. I cried during the treatment. Not from pain, but from the sheer emotion of feeling someone take care of me for once. Is everything all right, ma'am? The masseuse asked. It's perfect, I replied. It's been a long time since anyone has taken care of me like this. Another afternoon, we went to a painting class on the beach. I insisted I didn't know how to paint, that I had no talent for it. But Rose wouldn't let me give up. It's not about talent, Carol. It's about doing something that makes you happy. I painted a terrible sunset, with clashing colors and shapes that made no sense. But when I finished, I felt as if I had created the Mona Lisa. Just look at that, Rose said, looking at my painting. There's Carol the artist. Where has she been hiding all these years? Every day that passed in Santa Barbara, I felt like I was recovering pieces of myself that I had lost a long time ago. Pieces of the woman I had been before I became the woman who only gave and gave and gave. One night, as we were walking on the beach after dinner, Rose took my arm. Carol, do you know the difference between you and me? What's that? You spent 30 years taking care of everyone but yourself, and I learned from a young age that you can't give love if you don't love yourself first. Her words struck me like a flash of lightning in the dark. How did you learn that? The school of hard knocks, cousin. Life just beat it into me. But I was also lucky enough to have friends who told me, Hey, Rose, put yourself first. And you never had anyone to tell you that. No, I admitted. No one ever taught me it was okay to take care of myself. Well, now you know. And better late than never. That night, lying in bed in Rose's little house, listening to the sound of the ocean in the distance, I realized something that filled me with a profound peace. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely happy. I didn't have to worry about anyone. I didn't have to solve anyone else's problems. I didn't have to explain my spending, my schedule, my decisions. I was free, and freedom tasted like sea salt and a future full of possibilities. It's been 8 months since that family meeting where I stood up for myself for the first time in my life. 8 months since I stopped being the Bank of Carol and went back to being just Carol. As I write this, I'm sitting on the patio of my new home, a small but beautiful house I bought 2 blocks from the beach in Santa Barbara, with the money I had been saving for years for my children's emergencies. It turned out the emergency was me. After that week with Rose, I knew I couldn't go back to Chicago, back to the same old life. I couldn't go back to being the woman waiting in an empty house for her children to need something. I had tasted freedom, and it was too sweet to give up. I sold the house in Chicago, the house where I raised my children, where I sacrificed my dreams for theirs, where I became a shadow of myself. It hurt at first, because those walls held so many memories. But then I realized that I carried the good memories in my heart, and the painful ones were best left behind. With the money from the sale, plus the savings I had unknowingly accumulated over years of not spending on myself, I was able to buy this little house by the sea and had enough left over to live comfortably for the rest of my life. It turns out that a single person, a person who isn't supporting 3 entire families, can live very well on very little. The first few months were marked by total silence from my children. A silence that hurt at first, but slowly transformed into relief. For the first time in 30 years, My phone didn't ring with emergencies. I didn't have to rush to solve someone else's crisis. I didn't have to worry about anyone but myself. It was in those months of silence that I truly learned who Carol Miller was, when she wasn't defined by being the mother of Mike, Chris, and Jason. I discovered that I love getting up early to watch the sunrise from the beach. I discovered I have a talent for gardening when I do it for pleasure, not obligation. I discovered that I like to cook for myself, experimenting with new recipes, savoring every bite without rushing. I discovered I can make new friends, women my age who are also rediscovering themselves after decades of living for others. Mary Ellen, who lives next door, got divorced at 60 after 40 years of marriage. She says one day she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. I had become Bob's wife, the kid's mom, Mrs. Johnson's daughter-in-law, but I no longer knew who Mary Ellen was. She told me one afternoon while we had coffee on my patio. Letitia, whom I met in the painting class I now take every Tuesday, lost her husband last year, and, after the grieving period, realized that for the first time in her life, she could make decisions without consulting anyone. It was scary at first, she confessed. But now I understand that freedom is only scary when you're not used to it. The three of us have become inseparable. We go to the market together, we cook together on Sundays, we go with each other to the community dances held in the town square. We've formed our own little group of reborn women, as we jokingly call ourselves. 3 months ago, once I had learned to live without expecting anything from my children, Sophie sent me a letter, a handwritten letter in her 8-year-old script that said, "Grandma, I miss you so much. Mommy says you're mad at us, but I don't understand why. I'm not mad at you. I know you live at the beach now. Can I visit you someday? I love you, Sophie." I cried for hours holding that letter. My granddaughter, the one person in my family who had loved me unconditionally, was reaching out despite everything she had surely been told about me. I wrote back immediately, giving her my new address and phone number, telling her she would always be welcome in my home, that she would always be my beloved granddaughter no matter what happened with the rest of the family. 3 weeks later, Chris called me. Her voice sounded different, more humble, more tired. "Mom, Sophie has been insisting on visiting you. She won't stop talking about you, won't stop asking when she'll get to see you. Robert and we've been thinking about what? That maybe we didn't understand what you needed. That maybe we were unfair to you." It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first acknowledgement that there was something to understand. "Chris," I said with the calm I'd learned in these months of peace, "Sophie will always be welcome in my home. She's my granddaughter and I love her. But if you and the others want to be a part of my new life, you're going to have to accept that I am not the same woman I was before." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not Mom the Bank anymore. I'm not going to solve your problems. I'm not going to sacrifice my peace of mind for your crises. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be one of mutual respect, where I also receive, not just give." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Can we try?" she finally asked. "Of course we can try. But on my terms, Chris. Not on yours anymore." Last week, Sophie came to visit for the first time. Chris brought her, and although our conversation was tense and careful, I managed to see something in my daughter's eyes that I hadn't seen in years: respect. Sophie fell in love with my new life. We spent 3 days building sandcastles, cooking together, and painting terrible but love-filled watercolors. At night, she would curl up with me in my bed and tell me her secrets, her dreams, her fears, just like when she was little. "Grandma," she said on the last night, "why does Mommy say you were sad before and now you're happy?" "Because before, I had forgotten who I was, my love, and now I've found myself again." "How did you get lost?" "I thought that to be a good mom, I had to disappear as a person. I thought I had to give everything and ask for nothing. But that's not love, Sophie. That's just getting lost. And you're not lost anymore? Now I'm exactly where I need to be." When Chris came to pick her up, Sophie didn't want to leave. "Can I come back again soon, Grandma?" "You can come whenever you want, my love. This will always be your home, too." Chris hugged me before she left. It wasn't the forced hug from before, but a real one, from a daughter who is beginning to understand her mother. "You look good, Mom," she said. You look whole. Mike and Jason still haven't contacted me. I don't know if they ever will. For months, that hurt me. But now I've learned something fundamental. I can't control other people's choices, but I can control my own happiness. If my sons ever decide they want a real relationship with me, I'll be here. But I'm no longer going to wait my life away for that possibility. I'm no longer putting my happiness on pause for people who don't value my presence. This morning, as I watched the sunrise from my patio with a cup of coffee in my hands and the sound of the ocean filling my ears, I thought about the woman I was 8 months ago. That woman who felt invisible, used, taken for granted. That woman who had forgotten she had value beyond what she could give to others. And I felt immense compassion for her, but also immense gratitude that she had the courage to save herself. Because that's what I did. I saved myself. I rescued myself from a life that wasn't a life, from relationships that weren't love, from sacrifices that weren't valued. I learned that true love doesn't beg, that respect can't be bought, that a 64-year-old woman can start over and build a life better than she ever had. I learned that it's never too late to put yourself first. This story is ending, but my new life is just beginning, and for the first time in decades, I'm not afraid of the future, because the future belongs to me. Have you ever been in a similar situation? Do you know someone who had to choose between their own happiness and being the emotional bank for their family? Tell me about it in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone who needs to hear it. Because maybe, somewhere out there, there's a woman who needs to be reminded that she deserves to be loved unconditionally, respected without exception, and happy without apology, because it's never too late to be reborn.